Have I mentioned that the menus in Xdive are really bad? For example, when you check the roster, you can sort by the standard view, favorites, and a few other miscellaneous things like star rank, but there's no narrowing things down by characters, or series, or even alphabetically. That means that if someone were to get curious about the character breakdown, they'd need to reproduce the list, organized by whatever criteria they wanted to focus on. And that's exactly what happened to me. I made one list on paper, sorting characters by what series they were from, and made a ton of notes in the margins. At this point, I wasn't putting too much thought into things and wasn't planning on making a video, since I wasn't sure if a breakdown would be interesting enough. While I was able to add up that the offline version had 129 characters, and when I sorted things into other categories, my initial numbers did add up, when it came to my final male-female count, I kept being just one off, which drove me crazy, had me counting over and over again, and eventually just threw the whole thing onto an Excel sheet. This is also around the time that I determined that I'd sunk too much time into it and had to do something with it, thus here we are. Will this be boring or manage to garner more attention than I'm crediting it for? Who knows, we'll see. I'm Wes the Explosion, and here's the stupid way I occasionally spend my time because I'm a huge nerd who likes organizing things. So let's just clarify a few things right quick. While there are 129 characters in the offline version, many of them are recycled with different costumes and abilities, which we'll call alternates, or alts for short. Of course, that still brings up the question of what should be considered an alt and a unique character. When I first started listing everything out, I had some trouble putting this into words. Categorizing Awakened Zero as a Zero alt, but Omega as his own character, seemed kind of arbitrary, all things considered, but then I came up with the rule: if they can't be in the same place at the same time, they're the same character. Thus why I consider Omega and Zero Nightmare unique, but Zero and Mega Man 00 the same. Then there are three problem children who could fit into multiple categories by series: Dr. Light, Iris Another, and X-Kai. Iris Another and X-Kai aren't in any game previously, so they could be considered original or unique to Xdive. However, X-Kai was a model kit associated with the X series, so we'll include him there. Plus, Iris Another couldn't be in the same place as Iris or Colonel, so I put her under the X series, specifically as an Iris alt since she kept the name. Dr. Light is the trickiest though. Under most circumstances, I'd consider him a classic character, but he's in a Street Fighter getup, which is a secret in the X games. He's still human though, and not a hologram, but given that the whole game takes place in cyberspace, you could say that he still is a program. Plus he uses the Hadoken, which he passes down to X, so I'm counting him as an X character. And probably most important to note, I'm only looking at offline right now, though doing online wouldn't change too much. The characters that have a lot of alts continue to get a few more, and they throw in one Monster Hunter character and a few from Street Fighter, since those are both popular franchises. Honestly, kinda surprising that there aren't more guests thrown in. Now that I've explained it, you can follow along and adjust my numbers accordingly if you disagree, and if you need any further clarification, feel free to ask. With that out of the way, we can now finally begin. There are three classes of characters, and the lower the rating, the less passive skills that can be unlocked for them, as well as they tend to just be not as good overall. The lowest class is B, which has 6 characters, and the basic X, which is one of these, comes pre-unlocked. Next is A, which has 14 characters, and the highest is S, which has 109. It seems strange, since most tier lists tend to have a lot more letters, but even more than that, with as many S classes as there are, it seems like they'd be easier to come across. Thinking about it though, with there being that many, it'd probably be hard to get specific characters that you like. Plus, I imagine with gacha, the lower pools are more likely to be junk like resources, cards, and weapons, whereas getting an actual character is probably rarer. As for the lower tiered characters, they tend to be either basic ones that you'd want players to get early like X or Mega Man, or ones that you wouldn't expect to be too strong or sought after, like Sirbot or Massimo. The A classes being a bit more unique or desirable, like Bile or the Navigators, with S class being either special costumes, fan favorites, or both. While X is B and 0A, both have plenty of S tier alternates, including an S class that just takes their basic models and gives them a yellowish aura, but makes them way overpowered when it comes to stats and abilities. The mobile version seems to be doing similar things with a lot of the lower ranked units currently as well. Not too much to break down here, it's pretty straightforward. As you can likely guess, given the game's title, X series has by far the most representation, 22 unique characters and 66 counting alts. Next are the original characters, which have 6 unique and 17 total. Then it's the Zero series, which has 6 unique and 11 total, though remember that Zero gets a spot both here and in X. Right behind is Classic, which has 4 unique and matches Zero with 11 total, there's just more overlap here. Next is Battle Network with 14 unique and 10 total, almost matching Classic. Legends has 4 unique and 7 total. And what's in last is open to interpretation, ZX having only 2 unique but 5 total, and Star Force with just 3 characters, though all are unique. They could hold a tea party without needing to get up to change. So let's muse over what all this means. First, it confirms the popularity, both perceived and real, of the X series. And this is actually the second mobile game it's gotten, remember Zover? And while it got cancelled, there was even a planned MMO at one point, which shows how much stock Capcom puts in it compared to the others. The rest of the series seemed largely an afterthought, having a mere fraction of X's representation. While I think they really could have spread things around a bit more, it's fair enough since X is the game's main focus. Still though, Battle Network's popularity is perhaps the only one that could potentially rival X's, and with its setting, it would even work pretty well with the game's story, but you could argue that just how much of a fan favorite BN is only became apparent with the release of the Legacy collections, so it's more of a hindsight observation. It might not bug me so much if the second biggest category wasn't the original characters. I get that you need a few there to facilitate the story, but with how many alts they have and how much of a focus they get, it kinda turns me off to them. It can start to reek, like someone who writes a fanfiction where their OC is almost as strong as Goku, who they're also best friends with, was named Gohan's godfather, was another Saiyan that somehow never met the main characters until Z, finally killed Vegeta and is Trunks' real father, because they were Bulma's true love all along. If none of that made any sense, just ignore it. My point is, I just don't like fanfic characters that writers put more importance on than the established long-running ones. But whatever, I'm sure they did their research and decided that Blue Zero and Vocaloid Navigator would move units. As for the rest, most series seem to have relatively the same number of characters, a few less for Legends, though that is a niche series. And the lack of ZX isn't too weird, given how they only have 2 games and the series was cancelled pretty quickly. Star Force is a little disappointing though. They put in the main character, the popular ship, and the emo rival. Pretty bare bones. They make it pretty clear that they don't think anyone cares about Star Force and that they don't either. To be fair, while I do like the games, it's the one I remember least, and if I asked someone to name all the series, it'd be the one I'd expect to be forgotten most often. Capcom, please give us a collection so that Star Force can maybe redeem itself. I swear it has the goods. Now let's break it down by character, and again, as expected, X has the most, with 15 different versions of himself in his game. Zero is next with 9, honestly, I'm surprised he's not closer to X's number, given how much people love the guy. He's also the only one to get a form between 2 series, though only his base form makes it in for Mega Man Zero. And after them with 6 is Iris, making her the female character with the most. While it might sound crazy to say, I think that kind of establishes her as the main heroine of the franchise. I would expect them to give it to someone like Alia, who's been around for more games, or someone else who manages to just be, alive, but here we are. We should probably take this with a grain of salt, since this isn't a mainline game, produced largely by a branch of Capcom, but given that they probably still had some input on the roster, the characters were chosen with marketing in mind, and my own bias, I'm willing to say that Iris is number 1. Unless, of course, you're unwilling to count Iris Another as an alt, in which case, she has only 5 versions, putting her on par with Rico and Aiko. No. No. She is not going to be tied with the damn OCs for the girls' side. I just went over how elevating OCs over veteran characters bugs me. No, Gokurat 69X could not beat Majin Buu after doing the fusion dance with the newly revived Goku. Sit down. So yeah, Iris is still on top. Roll it back. Megaman.exe also has 5 versions, which is well earned. At 4, we have Roll, CL, and Sigma. While I'm not against a lot of roles in the game, it still feels weird that she has more than Mega Man. Not only the main character, but the guy who the entire franchise is named after, but okay. Speaking of, at 3, you have Mega Man, Bass, Axel, Alia, Lair, Bile, Cinnamon, OC Via, Leviathan, Ale, Tron, and Bass EXE. It's surprising and a little disappointing to see Mega Man and Axel here, given their importance to the series, especially Mega. And Aelia probably could have also used a few more too, given the focus on female characters and how she's been around for so long. Ale is just weird, given how much they seem to want to avoid ZX, yet they give her 3 and Pandora 2, which feels a little unbalanced somehow. Anyway, closing things out, at 2 there's OC Erator, Marino, Farum, Pallet, Pandora, and Volnut. Everyone else who got in just gets a base form. While I went over what this tells us as I discussed each set, with whether I felt it appropriate or not, there are still a few things left to mention. Like how bizarre it is that there's only a base 0 for Mega Man 0, yet CL and Leviathan get several alts. And that's all I'll say on that. For now. Wait a few minutes though. And then there's the apparent popularity of the X Command Mission spin-off, it having 5 characters with another 4 alts scattered between them. X and Zero also getting alts based off of special forms from that game, and X getting a unique skin from it as well. This one I'm a little less sure what to make of. I know the game has some die-hard fans, but it is kind of niche. Whether the developers were trying to appeal to that specific demographic, or if maybe they were just a part of the fanbase themselves and letting their bias make decisions, I can't say, but as someone with a fondness for the title myself, I can't complain. Speaking on alts specifically, several of them follow themes, celebrating different holidays and the like. There's a few for New Year's and Roll gets one for Easter, but those aren't the big ones. Feels like a waste to give the shrimp the only bunny costume though. Anyway, Christmas gets 4 for the girls, whereas Valentine's gets 7, since I'm including both Valentine's proper and White Day, which is a follow-up holiday in Japan where guys give gifts to any girls that gave them chocolate on Valentine's as payback, so you get 2 days with social and romantic pressure. Yeesh. Still, Axel gets a fancy suit for this, and Rico and Aiko get idol costumes. Wouldn't normally associate idols with Valentine's, but I don't make the rules. Guess that means you can only enjoy the Idol Master, Zombieland Saga, and VTuber concerts for the first few weeks of February. There are the 3 big themes though, the first of which is Halloween. It's a popular holiday. While a part of me wants to scoff it off as basic, I have to admit I enjoy a good spooky costume or just an excuse to dress up, but these are really awful. Or maybe boring would be more accurate. There are 8 of them, and they're actually pretty basic, adding horns or a cloak to a character, with some of the better ones being pumpkin themed, or, hold on to your orange hats, sexy pumpkin themed. This actually bugs me with how much wasted potential there is. Mega Man 7 takes a lot of inspiration from Hollywood movies, a few of them monster flicks, and then there's the even more obvious source of inspiration, Darkstalkers. Dress them up as Dimitri, Lord Raptor, or Jeddah. Heck, you can even keep it sexy with Morrigan or Cienko. Yeah, I'm putting her before Felicia, don't judge me. The point is, Capcom knows how to make good monster characters, so how they fumbled it this bad is inexcusable. Moving on, there are 8 dive armors, special suits for the game that has the main characters dress up as Gundam model kits. The 3 S-Class hunters each get a set, X getting 2 OCs get them, Mega Man EXE gets a dive cross, and Iris also has a dive armor, because, like we've established, she's the main heroine. Then there are the swimsuits. So many swimsuits. Only for female characters, of course. While I think giving a few of the guys some beachwear would have been fun, given the 3D some of the girls get, maybe they were worried that if anyone got a Speedo, they'd be pressured to put some bulge in or something. Whatever, waifus to push gacha is an established thing, but I really think it was a missed opportunity not to have X with some trunks and a jacket, and Zero in a swimsuit and shades along with a floaty pulling lifeguard duties. Anyway, there are 8 of these alts, but Aelia also gets a bikini skin for her default model. She doesn't get some new specials, like a beach ball attack or anything, but it is a new costume, so we'll say that there are 8.5 swimsuits in the game, making it the most popular theme. A few other fun ones are the 2 SD models for Zero and Second Armor X. Interesting that they went with that armor set, but they're cute and I collect Nendoroids, so nice inclusions. There are bridal costumes for Aelia and Lair. Kinda surprised no Iris though, and Pallet actually gets mad in the game that she's snubbed from the event. Some tuxedos might have been nice too. Then there's these 2 outfits, labeled Gangsta for Sigma and OC Erator, if I'm pronouncing that right. I imagine it's just a quirky translation and they were called Yankees or something like that in Japanese, but I find it interesting that these 2 were chosen. Sigma's the leader of the Mavericks, so him kinda throwing his weight around as the boss of a bunch of hoodlums makes some sense. But why Erator? Before I played the game, I wondered if there was some sort of interplay between the characters, like maybe she had a crush on Sigma, but that doesn't seem to be the case, at least not from what I've seen, so why her? It's the boobs, isn't it? The last thing won't take too long to go over, just what the breakdown of gender representation is. And I'm gonna go by what seems obvious. Cut me some slack if the Surbots are supposed to be neither male or female, just genderless, all-purpose children or something. I'm doing my best. There are 72 males in the roster, 29 being unique characters and the rest being alternate versions, whereas there are 57 females, 21 unique, the rest alts. That makes it 29 to 21, with 8 more boy characters, or 72 to 57, with 15 more guys overall. While not perfectly balanced, it's actually pretty close, given that video games are considered a more male hobby, which tends to be reflected in cast and playable rosters. It's really weird when you consider just how male-dominated Mega Man is. I mean, it's in the title, and the majority of the characters in the classic series also have the last name Man. It shows just how much they needed to scrape to come up with this roster. I've said this in past videos, but the rule with gacha games, which this originally was and still is on mobile, seems to be using pretty ladies to get people to shell out money for more pulls or rolls or spins or whatever we call it. We've already touched on the whole swimsuit thing, and with how sexualized some characters are, like Erator, it's pretty obvious that they were banking on the horny to move sales. It makes it even stranger, though, that they decided Mega Man was a prime candidate for this kind of business model. While it has more characters to pull from than most Capcom franchises, they probably still could have done a good bit with Street Fighter, especially if they let Darkstalkers in as special guests. Still though, despite the typical tone I take on the topic, I can't be completely negative this time. First, this could be a hint for the future. If they added a lot of women to X-Dive, if that worked to grab attention, then why not mainline as well? I thought it was fun when the Navigators were playable in X8, and I lament that Honey Woman was passed over in Classic 9, so going forward, maybe female characters aren't a fun bonus, but just normal. In addition to that, it's nice that you're allowed to play as a girl without getting shamed for it. I mean, Peach can frickin' float. She's clearly the best character in Mario 2, plus the Peach Bomber is pretty good in Smash. How are you giving me crap for this? So while the reasoning might be a little suspect, I can't help but feel that it's still a step forward. What the heck has this video turned into? Am I giving social commentary now? Let's get back on track. As just a quick bonus, let's look at the stages and bosses for the story mode. While there are 23 on the menu, 3 stages get reused, along with 2 bosses, and 1 stage is just kind of a generic boss capsule room, so we'll ignore them. For stages, we have 2 from Classic. The one from 7 is Shade Man's Haunted Manor, so it was obviously chosen for the atmosphere, and from 8, there's Grenade Man's, where they have some decent obstacles and puzzles with the exploding blocks, for one of the better setup levels. From Battle Network, there is 1 stage, Den Area from the GameCube's network transmission, likely because it was the only platformer entry, and with the extra paths it has to seek out, with all the warp pads, it's probably the only other stage I'd say actually has good level design. ZX gets 3 stages, with a 4th that shows up a lot in event missions, worth noting even if we're not counting it. It's still pretty odd to see that much representation given how little it gets in the roster, and how not even Classic sees all that many stages pulled from it, but maybe they just thought the levels in that series were really stellar. Which is kind of a shame, given how basic the reproductions here are. And then the other 13 are from X, 1 from 3, 2 from 5, 4 from 1, and a whopping 6 from 4. While the X series getting the most love isn't anything new, we've already established it earlier, how much focus is put on 1 and 4 specifically is pretty telling. I know they're fan favorites, and it wouldn't surprise me if they were popular with the developers too, so it probably also explains why characters like Colonel, Sigma's X4 body, and especially Iris take up so much space on the roster. When it comes to the bosses, you have even less from the other series. Classic only getting the Yellow Devil, and there being just 1 original boss, though given that he's based off of a Reploid, you could also include him with X. The rest, a full 20, all pull from X. So more of the same favoritism, further establishing that it's likely considered the most popular of the Mega Man franchises and most marketable. As for specifics, they're a bit more all over the place. X2 getting 3, but I'm counting Wireframe Sigma, which is treated as a sub-boss, as a full boss. 3 getting 4, with Bit and Bite being the 2 being used twice, so you could bump the game up to 6. 4 getting just 2, 5 2, 6 1, 7 1, and Command Mission getting my favorite, Mad Nautilus, so they continue to give it a little more attention than I'd expect. The big winner is the original X, which has 6 bosses. And looking at the grand total, 5 of these fights are different forms of Sigma, no surprise there. While the uptick in X3 attention is a little surprising, all of this mostly continues to establish that the X family is blessed, with the first and fourth children being the favorites. While X4 doesn't get too many bosses in the story, they do get several more in events. So what are the big takeaways here? First, the X series is considered the heavy hitter of the Mega Man franchise, which we probably could have already figured. Second, as a result, X and Zero are considered the most popular, though while Capcom isn't hiding X7, Axel does seem to be less of a priority. Third, Iris is best girl. I mean, I ran the numbers, you can't argue with it, it's right there. And fourth, this is a waifu game. While there are more guys than girls, with how male-dominated the franchise is, it is a lot closer than it should be proportionally. Maybe all of this is obvious, though I think the first point could be argued against, given Battle Network's recent success, and the third is kinda surprising, but you won't hear any backstats from me. Maybe this was largely boring and a waste of time, but after how long I spent obsessively organizing all the data, I couldn't let myself just drop this. Now that I've finally gotten all the crazy out, I can let it go and just glance at my spreadsheets if I need some light clarifications. So, what do you think? Was this pointless? Did I highlight anything interesting? Anything you want to dispute or that I missed? Thanks for humoring me on this one, and maybe consider subscribing if you're into Mega Man. I promise my videos normally aren't this dry. Should probably take a break from X Dive for a bit.